Tonight, you're invited into a sacred space, a place of stillness, warmth, and deep reflection. Let this moment be a soft doorway between the noise of the outside world and the quiet sanctuary within you. Let the hum of your day slowly fade as you turn your attention inward. For centuries, Buddhist monks have passed down a quiet secret, not through shouting or struggle, but through silence and surrender, the secret to calming the restless mind and touching a depth of peace that cannot be shaken. And tonight you will experience that for yourself. So before we settle in, feel free to like and subscribe only if this space brings you peace. Your presence here is what matters most, and subscribing ensures that we can continue this peaceful journey together. If you're comfortable, I invite you to share your location and local time with us in the comments below. It's always wonderful to feel connected to a larger community as we explore these teachings together, no matter where we are in the world. Now let's return to our practice. Find a comfortable position. Allow your body to settle into the surface beneath you. Let your back rest gently, your shoulders drop, your hands soften. Adjust your pillow or blanket so that you feel fully supported. You are safe here. You are welcome here. You are home. Take a deep breath. And another. With each inhale, gather the tension that's hiding in your body. With each exhale, release it like leaves drifting down a stream. Let it go. Let the muscles in your face relax. Let your chest soften. Let your thoughts slow down. There is no rush. There is nowhere else you need to be, but here. This journey will not be loud or intense. It will be gentle like the rustling of leaves in the evening breeze. We are going to walk slowly, mindfully, through stories and truths that will help you recognize toxic energies in your life, those relationships that quietly take more than they give, that disturb your peace, that leave you doubting your own worth. Together, we will explore 10 signs of toxic people signs that will open your eyes to the ways their behavior may have been affecting your emotional and mental well-being. These signs may not always be immediately obvious, but with awareness, you will begin to see them clearly. Toxic people often operate subtly, wearing a mask of charm, but behind it, they undermine your self-worth and happiness. But more than just recognition, this journey offers a path forward. Rooted in timeless Buddhist wisdom, you will receive tools, not sharp weapons to fight, but soft instruments to heal awareness, compassion, detachment, and most of all, clarity. These are the gifts of the Dharma, and tonight they are being placed gently in your hands. You might feel scattered at first. Your thoughts may try to pull you back into worries or old stories. That's okay. Let them rise. Let them fall. This is a practice, a soft return. With every breath, you are learning how to come home to yourself. So rest deeply now. Sink into this moment. Let this be a turning point, a space where something in you begins to shift, where your soul feels heard, where your heart, tired from carrying too much, is allowed to set it all down. Because by the end of this journey, you will not only understand how to protect yourself from toxic people, you will remember something ancient and true, that your peace is sacred, that your light is not meant to be dimmed, that freedom begins with you. Take another breath. Feel the stillness begin to hold you. And when you're ready, we will begin with the first sign. Now dim the lights, maybe light a candle or incense, and let's wander into stillness together. In our first teaching, we will explore a very common yet often overlooked sign of a toxic person: constant criticism. Have you ever encountered someone who seems to find fault in everything you do? No matter how hard you try, it feels like they are always pointing out your flaws, always telling you what you did wrong, and making you feel like nothing you do is ever good enough. This relentless critique can seem never-ending, and over time it erodes your confidence, leaving you questioning your own worth and abilities. It's like being caught in the midst of a storm of negative energy, where each harsh word is a gust of wind pushing you further away from your center. Slowly, bit by bit, your self-esteem is chipped away, and the weight of their words becomes a burden on your spirit. Imagine this toxic influence as a dark cloud constantly hanging over you. Every time they speak, it's as if their words are rain, and the longer it continues, the more you start to feel drenched by their judgment. You may begin to doubt your decisions, second-guess your actions, and wonder if you are ever truly capable of doing anything right. The storm of criticism leaves you feeling exhausted, drained, and emotionally overwhelmed. The harder you try to stand tall, the more it feels like you are sinking deeper into the mud of self-doubt. In Zen Buddhism, one of the core teachings is the concept of non-attachment, a powerful tool in dealing with situations like constant criticism. When we attach our worth to external validation, like the opinions of others, we become vulnerable to their judgment. We are at the mercy of their words, their views, and their criticisms. The Buddha taught us that true peace comes from within, and we must cultivate an inner sense of calm and self-worth that cannot be shaken by the external world. Non-attachment does not mean indifference or detachment from the world around us. It simply means that we do not cling to others' opinions and we don't allow them to define us. We recognize that our true value is intrinsic and nothing outside of us can take that away. There once was a mighty oak tree, tall and proud. It stood alone in the forest with its thick branches reaching high into the sky, proudly displaying its strength and grandeur. The oak tree had witnessed many seasons come and go, enduring storms, heavy winds, and the passage of time. All who passed by admired its immovable stature, praising its unyielding form. Not far from the oak tree there grew a small bamboo shoot. This bamboo was delicate and slender, its stem thin and flexible, easily swaying in the wind. It seemed so fragile in comparison to the oak, but it was steadfast in its own way, bending gently with the winds, never resisting, always flowing with the natural movement of the world. One day, a fierce storm rolled into the forest. Dark clouds filled the sky and the winds began to howl with intensity. The oak tree, proud and tall, stood firm against the wind, refusing to yield. It held its position as if it was too strong to bend. The bamboo, on the other hand, swayed with the wind, its stem bending and flexing in the storm's wake. As the storm raged on, the oak tree began to crack its strong branches, starting to break under the strain. The bamboo, however, remained standing, gently bowing to the wind, resilient in its flexibility. By the end of the storm, the oak tree had been uprooted, its mighty form shattered and lying on the ground, while the bamboo was still swaying softly in the breeze, its roots firmly intact beneath the earth. The oak had clung to its pride, its rigid strength, and refused to bend. It had believed that its might alone would carry it through the storm. But the bamboo, though smaller and seemingly weaker, understood that true strength comes from flexibility, from non-resistance, and from adapting to the forces around it. In this story, the oak represents someone who is rigid and unyielding, much like how a toxic person's constant criticism can force you to become defensive and inflexible. The oak tree stands tall, its branches extended in all directions, asserting its dominance over the forest, believing that its strength is enough to withstand anything. However, the oak is not prepared for the storm. Its inflexibility in the face of powerful forces leads to its downfall. The wind, fierce and unrelenting, bends the oak, causing its great form to snap and crumble under the pressure. This image of rigidity reflects what happens when we allow ourselves to be defined by external judgments, criticisms, or expectations. We become like the oak tree, proud, unyielding, and ultimately vulnerable to the storms of life, unable to bend when necessary. On the other hand, the bamboo stands as a symbol of adaptability and resilience. It does not resist the wind. Instead, it flows with it. The bamboo bends and sways with the gusts, allowing the storm to pass without being broken. The bamboo understands that true strength does not come from resisting the natural flow of life, but from learning to bend with it. It stands tall in its own way, flexible, resilient, and unshaken by the forces that try to uproot it. This is the essence of the lesson that Zen Buddhism teaches us. Flexibility and non-resistance are not signs of weakness, but of true strength. The bamboo does not fight the storm. It embraces it and moves with it, never allowing itself to be broken. Buddhist teachings remind us that we must learn to bend like the bamboo, remaining rooted in our own inner peace and wisdom, but flexible in the face of external forces. In life, we will encounter many storms, and we cannot always control the winds that blow our way. People may criticize us, judge us, or attempt to manipulate us with their words, and sometimes the forces around us may feel overwhelming. But when we stay rooted in our inner peace, when we cultivate an unwavering sense of self-worth that is not dependent on the opinions of others, we can weather these storms without being swept away. It's not about avoiding criticism or conflict. It's about how we choose to respond to it. When someone criticizes you, instead of reacting defensively or becoming emotionally overwhelmed, try to observe the criticism without attachment. This doesn't mean accepting or agreeing with their opinion. Rather, it means not allowing their words to define your sense of self. Just as the bamboo bends with the wind without breaking, we too can bend with the criticism without letting it harm us. We can recognize that their criticism says more about their own fears, insecurities, and unresolved issues than it does about us. When someone projects their negativity onto us, it often reflects their inner struggles, their lack of peace, or their unhealed wounds. This is not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of theirs. In the practice of mindfulness, we cultivate the ability to observe without judgment. When we practice mindfulness, we learn to witness our thoughts and feelings without becoming attached to them. We become the observer of our experience rather than the experiencer. In moments of criticism, this practice becomes especially powerful. When someone criticizes, you take a deep breath and allow yourself to pause for a moment. Check in with yourself. How does the criticism make you feel? Does it cause you to feel angry, hurt, or defensive? Can you observe these feelings without becoming them? Can you simply notice them without attaching meaning or value to them? This practice allows us to stay grounded, to remain like the bamboo, flexible, peaceful, and unshaken by the external forces at play. When we are able to observe criticism without attachment, we reclaim our power. We no longer allow others to dictate our emotions or our self-worth. By observing the criticism without judgment, we prevent the storm of negative words from damaging our inner peace. Just as the bamboo remains rooted in the earth, we remain anchored in our own sense of self. We recognize that no one else has the power to take away our peace unless we allow it. We are the ones who decide how we respond to the criticism we face. We can choose to remain calm, to let the wind pass by, and to remain rooted in our own truth. Take a moment now to reflect on how criticism has affected you in your life. When was the last time someone's words caused you to doubt yourself? Can you remember a time when you internalized criticism and let it dictate your mood or actions? How did it feel when you allowed someone's words to take root in your mind and influence your sense of self? Take a deep breath and notice what comes up. Don't judge yourself for how you felt. Simply observe the experience as it arises. Here's a gentle exercise you can try the next time you face criticism. Take a deep breath and remind yourself, I am not defined by this moment. I am like the bamboo, flexible and at peace. As you breathe, allow yourself to observe the criticism without judgment. Imagine the words as a gust of wind coming and going. See them as a passing storm, not something that you need to carry with you. Let the criticism flow through you without clinging to it. And remember, just like the bamboo, your peace is unshaken. No matter what the storm may bring, you are grounded in your own truth, your own self-worth, and your own peace. As we move into the next section, remember that the path to inner peace involves detaching from the need for external validation and building a foundation of self-compassion. When you stand firm in your own sense of peace, nothing, no matter how harsh or critical, can shake you. As we continue on our journey, we now come to the second sign of a toxic person manipulation through guilt. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where no matter what you do, someone seems to be blaming you for things that are not your fault? A toxic person may not always express this manipulation directly, but they will subtly or overtly make you feel responsible for their emotions, actions, or even their happiness. Their guilt-tripping behavior is a weapon, one that they use to control you emotionally. It can make you feel as if you are constantly in debt to them, constantly needing to prove yourself, constantly walking on eggshells to avoid making them upset. Their emotional well-being becomes tangled with yours, and you are left feeling as though it is your responsibility to meet their every need. At first, this kind of emotional manipulation might seem like a natural part of a relationship, especially if you care deeply for the person. You might want to help them, be there for them, and offer support in their times of need. But as time passes, this pattern of manipulation can become exhausting. The emotional weight starts to build up like an anchor, pulling you deeper and deeper into a cycle of self-blame and obligation. The toxic person may say things like, "After everything I've done for you, how could you not do this for me?" Or, "I guess you don't care about me as much as I care about you." These words, though seemingly innocent or even heartfelt, are crafted to make you feel guilty, to make you feel indebted to them, and to pull you deeper into their emotional control. Over time, this constant manipulation begins to erode your sense of self. It makes you feel as if you are constantly in the wrong, and no matter how much you give, it is never enough. You start to question your own worth, your ability to say no, and whether you are truly capable of loving and caring for someone without being manipulated. The toxicity of this behavior chips away at your self-esteem, leaving you emotionally drained and feeling as if you are living under a constant cloud of guilt. In Zen Buddhism, we are taught the importance of mindful compassion, compassion that is not rooted in guilt, but in genuine understanding and love. Guilt, however, is often a false emotion, a feeling that only weighs us down and traps us in cycles of self-blame. The Buddha's teachings encourage us to cultivate an inner peace that is not dependent on the emotional states or manipulative behaviors of others. True compassion, according to Buddhist philosophy, arises from a place of equanimity and wisdom, not from a place of guilt or obligation. When we allow ourselves to be manipulated by guilt, we relinquish our peace in order to maintain the comfort of others, and in doing so, we neglect the wisdom of our own hearts. Guilt, as the Buddha teaches, is often rooted in attachment to expectations, attachment to the approval of others, and attachment to the need to please. When we act from guilt, we are not acting from our true selves, but from a place of fear of disappointing others, or fear of not being enough. True compassion, however, does not demand anything in return. It is given freely from a place of abundance and peace within. It does not come from a sense of debt or obligation, but from a place of love that does not expect anything back. Once a Zen monk was walking through a village when he encountered a beggar sitting by the side of the road. The beggar looked up at the monk with pleading eyes, his clothes ragged and torn, and he said, "Monk, I have nothing. I am starving. Please give me something to eat." The monk, although compassionate, had very little with him. He took a deep breath and smiled gently, offering a calm response. "I understand your suffering, but I have only enough for myself." The beggar's eyes hardened and he raised his voice, saying, "After everything that you have learned, after all the wisdom you have gained, you won't even share a meal with a poor beggar like me. How can you be so selfish?" The monk paused for a moment, deeply considering the words of the beggar. He did not react with guilt or shame. Instead, he quietly replied, "It is not selfishness to honor one's own needs. To give from a place of guilt is not true compassion. It is a reflection of your own suffering, not a gift of love." The beggar looked confused, and the monk continued, "True generosity comes from a place of abundance, not from a sense of debt. When we give out of guilt, we only perpetuate our own suffering. But when we give from a place of peace and wisdom, we free both ourselves and the receiver from the cycle of dependence." With that, the monk offered the beggar a small piece of bread, but more importantly, he gave him the wisdom to understand that true compassion requires balance. Guilt has no place in true generosity. The beggar, initially angry and defensive, felt a deep shift within himself. He realized that his demands were born not from love, but from his own unmet needs and insecurities. The monk's response helped the beggar see that his own emotional state was not something he could place on others, and that true compassion comes from a place of peace, not from manipulation. In this story, the beggar's manipulation through guilt is a clear and powerful example of how toxic relationships function. At first glance, the beggar's plea for food seems like a simple request for help, a person in need asking for compassion. But as we look deeper into the situation, we see that the beggar's demand was not truly driven by genuine need. His words were not coming from a place of humility or true hunger, but from an underlying belief that the monk owed him something. The beggar assumed that because the monk was a learned, compassionate figure, he had a duty to give. The beggar used guilt as a tool, trying to force the monk into a position where he felt obligated to help, not out of kindness, but out of a sense of debt. He said, "After everything that you have learned, after all the wisdom you have gained, you won't even share a meal with a poor beggar like me. How can you be so selfish?" This is where the manipulation lies, not in the request for food itself, but in the subtle, emotionally charged demand wrapped in guilt. The beggar's tactic is one that we often encounter in toxic relationships. Someone's emotional demands are made in such a way that they manipulate our sense of obligation. When someone tries to control us with guilt, they aim to make us feel like we owe them something, even if we haven't done anything wrong. This type of manipulation can feel overwhelming, leaving us uncertain about whether we are acting out of genuine compassion or simply responding to a sense of obligation that has been imposed upon us. But the monk's response was rooted in wisdom, compassion, and balance. He did not allow the beggar's emotional manipulation to cloud his judgment. Instead of reacting out of guilt, shame, or obligation, the monk chose to respond from a place of clarity and understanding. His response was simple yet profound. It is not selfishness to honor one's own needs. To give from a place of guilt is not true compassion. It is a reflection of your own suffering, not a gift of love. The monk's wisdom reveals a powerful truth. True compassion does not arise from guilt or obligation. If we give out of guilt, we are not acting from a place of pure generosity. We are responding to an emotional manipulation that comes from the other person's internal struggles. True generosity, as the monk illustrates, comes from a place of abundance and peace, not from a sense of debt. It is the kind of giving that flows freely, without strings attached, without expectation of anything in return. It is a gift of love, not a transaction of emotional control. The beggar's demand for food, therefore, was not born from a genuine need, but from the belief that the monk was in some way indebted to him. The beggar's actions were rooted in attachment. The attachment to the idea that he was entitled to the monk's help, that the monk had to fulfill his request because of some perceived obligation. This is often the case in toxic relationships, where one person may feel entitled to something from the other, whether it's time, love, resources, or energy, and they use guilt to try to enforce that entitlement. In toxic relationships, guilt can be weaponized in this way. The person using guilt as a tool of control often expects the other person to sacrifice their own well-being for the sake of maintaining the relationship. They make the other person feel responsible for their happiness, emotions, or comfort. The emotional demands placed on you can quickly feel like a weight, one that you feel compelled to carry, even when it is not yours to bear. This can lead to a situation where you are constantly giving and sacrificing, but never feeling truly at peace or fulfilled. Over time, this dynamic can cause a deep sense of resentment, frustration, and burnout, as you find yourself giving more and more often without receiving anything in return. This lesson from the Zen monk's encounter with the beggar is crucial when navigating toxic relationships. When someone tries to manipulate you with guilt, it is essential to recognize that their emotional demands are coming from a place of attachment, not genuine need. Their emotions are often rooted in their own fears, insecurities, and unresolved struggles. By absorbing their guilt and acting out of obligation, you allow their internal struggles to define your actions, preventing you from acting from your true self. Instead of responding from a place of clarity and peace, you are reacting to their emotional manipulation, losing touch with your own needs and wisdom in the process. When we allow ourselves to be manipulated by guilt, we lose our sense of balance and peace. The toxic person may make us feel as if we are responsible for their emotional state. But this is an illusion. We cannot control another person's emotions, nor should we feel responsible for their happiness or suffering. The Buddha's teachings encourage us to live in alignment with our inner truth, to act from a place of wisdom and compassion, not out of guilt or obligation. Take a moment now to reflect on how guilt has played a role in your relationships. Have you ever felt manipulated by someone's guilt? Perhaps you have experienced a time when you did something out of obligation, rather than from a place of genuine love and compassion. How did it feel when you acted out of guilt rather than from your own wisdom? Did it leave you feeling drained, resentful, or even unsure of your own decisions? Take a deep breath now and allow yourself to simply observe these memories without judgment. There is no need to criticize yourself. Simply notice how guilt may have affected your actions in the past and how it shaped your interactions with others. Here's a gentle exercise for you to try the next time someone attempts to guilt you into doing something. Take a step back. Close your eyes and take a deep, mindful breath. recognize the emotion as it arises within you. Ask yourself, is this guilt truly mine to carry? Am I acting out of love and compassion, or am I responding to manipulation? Allow yourself to pause, to be still, and to observe the emotion without allowing it to dictate your actions. Honor your own truth and respond with kindness, but not with guilt. This is the practice of right action, acting from a place of mindful compassion and wisdom, rather than out of obligation or emotional coercion. As we move into the next section, remember that the Buddha teaches us to be mindful of where our energy is spent. When we are manipulated by guilt, we lose our sense of balance and peace. By practicing mindfulness and non-attachment, we can break free from this cycle and return to a place of inner calm, allowing us to act from wisdom rather than emotional coercion. Let's continue on our journey together as we explore the next sign of toxic behavior and how Buddhist wisdom can help us break free from it. We now arrive at the third sign of a toxic person undermining your confidence. This form of behavior can be subtle, yet its impact is profound. Have you ever encountered someone who seems to constantly make you doubt yourself? They may not attack you directly, but through their words and actions they create an environment where you start to question your decisions, your abilities, and even your worth as a person. This can manifest as someone who consistently points out your flaws, diminishes your accomplishments, or highlights your mistakes in a way that chips away at your self-esteem. Over time, it feels like the constant weight of their criticism is causing cracks in your confidence, slowly eroding the inner strength you once had. At first, this undermining might feel like simple feedback advice or concern for your well-being. After all, sometimes we can all benefit from constructive criticism. However, the crucial difference lies in how it's delivered and how it makes you feel. When criticism shifts from helpful to harmful, it becomes a tool of manipulation. It starts to make you feel as though you're never good enough, never capable enough, and never deserving of success. This constant erosion of your self-worth is like a slow process of wearing down a mountain. Each comment, each word, no matter how small, is like a raindrop that steadily eats away at the rock's surface. You may not notice it at first, but over time you begin to question your own judgment and intuition. It is this kind of emotional manipulation that can cause long-term damage to your confidence if left unchecked. This type of toxic behavior creates a mental environment of uncertainty where you are constantly on edge, second-guessing your decisions and actions. No matter how much effort you put into making things right or doing your best, you are made to feel like you're always falling short. The toxic person's constant undermining becomes a form of control, making you doubt yourself at every turn. It's like a small voice in your head that constantly whispers, "You're not enough." And before long, that voice begins to drown out your own inner wisdom. The toxic person's actions become a lens through which you see yourself, and it distorts your self-image. In Buddhist teachings, confidence is not about arrogance or pride, but about self-awareness and trust in one's own inherent wisdom. The Buddha often spoke of the importance of right view, seeing things as they truly are. Right view helps us understand the world and our place in it without attachment to external validation. Right view leads to right effort, which encourages us to develop the strength to face life's challenges with clarity, determination, and wisdom. In Buddhism, confidence is built on mindful self-reflection, not on seeking validation from others or relying on external praise. It comes from trusting the inner wisdom that resides within each of us. This inner wisdom is not shaped by the opinions of others, but by the clarity and peace that we cultivate through mindfulness and meditation. Let me share a story from Zen practice that beautifully illustrates the power of self-awareness and the importance of trusting your own wisdom even when others may attempt to undermine you. This story will help to reveal how we can cultivate confidence and resist the effects of toxic behavior. Once a young student arrived at a Zen master's monastery, eager to learn the ways of Zen. He had heard many stories about the master's wisdom and was filled with excitement and anticipation. On his first day, the master asked the student to perform a simple task sweeping the floor. The student eagerly set to work, determined to impress the master and show his commitment to his studies. However, as the student swept, the master walked by and said, "You are not doing it right. You are too fast. Slow down." The student, feeling a little embarrassed and self-conscious, slowed his pace. He wanted to do things the right way to meet the master's expectations. But as he continued, the master walked by again and said, "You are not paying attention. You are missing spots. You must focus more." The student began to feel frustrated. No matter how carefully he swept, the master seemed to find fault with everything he did. Each time the student thought he was making progress, the master pointed out another mistake. The student started to feel as though he was failing at the simplest of tasks. "Why can't I get this right?" he wondered. "Am I so inept that I cannot even sweep the floor properly?" The more the master pointed out his mistakes, the more the student's confidence began to wane. The frustration was building, and with each criticism, the student's belief in his abilities was slowly being chipped away. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this," the student thought. "Maybe I'm not good enough to be here." Finally, the master stopped and looked at the student, noticing his frustration and the cloud of self-doubt that had settled over him. "Why are you upset?" the master asked calmly, his tone gentle but piercing. "I cannot seem to do anything right," the student replied, his voice tinged with self-doubt. "I've tried my best, and still you find fault with me." The master smiled gently and said, "It is not the sweeping that matters, but your mind. You see, you are caught in the idea that there is a right and wrong way. You are allowing my words to shape your actions, and that is why you are losing your peace. True wisdom comes when you can trust your own mind and act without hesitation, free from the fear of being judged." The student paused, reflecting on the master's words. He realized that he had become so focused on doing things perfectly, so focused on meeting the master's expectations, that he had lost touch with his own inner wisdom. He had been sweeping not from a place of mindful presence, but from a place of fear of being judged, fear of failing, fear of not being good enough. The master's words did not diminish his ability to sweep. Instead, they illuminated the true essence of confidence. Confidence comes from trusting yourself, regardless of external judgment. From that day forward, the student began to sweep the floor with a calm and centered mind. He no longer feared making mistakes, nor did he try to impress the master. Instead, he focused on the act of sweeping itself, paying attention to the present moment and trusting his own abilities. He realized that the true essence of Zen lay not in doing things perfectly, but in cultivating the ability to act with awareness and self-trust, free from the weight of external judgment. In this story, the Zen master's subtle challenges to the student's work serve as a form of external criticism. However, what is truly important here is that these critiques, though they may seem harsh at first, do not diminish the student's inherent wisdom or ability. The Zen master's intention is not to break the student's spirit or undermine his potential. Rather, the master is using these gentle provocations to guide the student toward a deeper understanding of himself and the nature of his actions. The master's teachings help the student realize that true confidence does not rely on the approval of others or on avoiding failure. Instead, it is built on the cultivation of self-awareness, the trust in one's own abilities, and the clarity that comes from knowing one's own truth. The student's frustration in the story stems from his attachment to the external validation he sought from the master. He was concerned with doing things correctly in the eyes of the master, rather than being present in the moment, trusting his own judgment and understanding that mistakes are part of the learning process. The Zen master uses the student's confusion to demonstrate that true confidence comes from a place of inner peace and self-assurance, not from doing things perfectly, but from trusting oneself and one's ability to adapt and learn from each experience. It's not about pleasing others or gaining their approval, but about being grounded in one's own truth, regardless of external feedback. The key lesson here is that when we cultivate self-awareness and trust in our inner wisdom, we are not easily shaken by the criticisms or judgments of others. The Zen student learned that the external world can only sway him if he allows it. The next time he faced an obstacle or a critical comment, he would remember the lesson of the bamboo, bending with the wind, flexible, unbroken, and grounded in its own essence. This lesson is crucial, not just in Zen practice, but in how we navigate our lives, especially in toxic relationships. Toxic relationships often involve people who constantly undermine your confidence. Their actions and words can leave you feeling small, insignificant, and uncertain of your worth. These toxic individuals may not always intend to be overtly cruel, but their behavior can still have a damaging impact. They might criticize your decisions, question your judgment, or belittle your accomplishments. They may project their insecurities onto you, making you feel as though you are always falling short. They try to make you doubt yourself, causing you to lose confidence in your own abilities, in your sense of self, and in your right to be happy and fulfilled. The harmful truth about toxic people is that their constant criticism is rarely a reflection of your actions or abilities. Instead, it reflects their own fears, insecurities, and unresolved issues. When someone criticizes or undermines you, it often says more about their own struggles than it does about your shortcomings. Toxic people may criticize you as a way of elevating themselves or making themselves feel better as they project their own sense of inadequacy onto you. In doing so, they seek to diminish your light in order to make themselves feel more secure or powerful. The irony is that in the process, they only reveal their own deep-seated issues, and they only serve to weaken their own confidence even further. Just like the student in the Zen story, we too must learn to trust our inner wisdom and not allow the judgments of others to define us. We must cultivate confidence from within, rooted in self-awareness and self-compassion. Confidence in Buddhism is not about seeking external validation or proving ourselves to others. It's about being grounded in our truth, acting from a place of clarity and awareness, and trusting in our own inherent abilities. The Buddha's teachings remind us to look within for our answers, to act from a place of mindfulness, and to stop relying on the opinions of others to validate our worth. When we practice mindful self-compassion, we stop seeking validation from external sources. We learn to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we offer to others. Self-compassion is not self-indulgence or self-pity. It is the practice of acknowledging our humanity, our flaws, our mistakes, our imperfections, without judgment. It is the practice of embracing ourselves fully and recognizing that we are worthy of love and acceptance just as we are. Through self-compassion, we create an inner foundation of confidence that is unshaken by the opinions of others. This inner confidence becomes a shield that protects us from the toxic behavior of others and allows us to remain true to ourselves no matter what the world may throw our way. Take a moment now to reflect on how your confidence has been affected by others. Have you ever experienced someone constantly undermining your self-esteem or making you question your decisions? Have you ever felt like you weren't good enough because of someone else's criticisms or judgments? Perhaps you've experienced a time when their words or actions made you doubt your abilities, and you allowed those doubts to take root in your mind. How did it feel when you let their opinions shape your perception of yourself? Take a deep breath and give yourself permission to simply observe these memories without judgment. There is no need to criticize yourself for being affected by the words of others. Just notice how these experiences may have affected your confidence in the past. Here's a gentle exercise you can try the next time someone undermines your confidence. Pause for a moment and take a deep breath. Close your eyes, and instead of focusing on their words or actions, turn inward. Ask yourself, do I believe in myself? Am I acting from a place of clarity and wisdom? Or am I letting their judgment shape my actions? Allow yourself to return to a place of inner peace and self-trust. Remind yourself that your worth is not defined by others' opinions, and that you are not defined by their judgments. Your worth comes from your actions, your intentions, and the compassion you show to yourself and others. Let this awareness guide you in moments of doubt, helping you to reconnect with your own confidence and wisdom. As we continue our journey through the signs of toxic behavior, we now arrive at the fourth sign: blame shifting. Have you ever encountered someone who always seems to find a way to make you responsible for their problems, their mistakes, or their emotions? No matter what happens, they never take accountability for their actions. Instead, they find ways to shift the blame onto you, making you feel guilty, ashamed, or responsible for their difficulties. This form of manipulation can be incredibly exhausting and damaging, as it places an unfair burden on you while creating a cycle of emotional manipulation that is difficult to escape. The toxic person, by shifting blame, makes you feel as if you are always the one who is at fault, even when you haven't done anything wrong. At first, this might seem like a normal part of a relationship, especially if the person is close to you or holds some level of authority over you. They may be a family member, a close friend, or even a coworker, and you may feel compelled to accommodate them, fix their problems, or take responsibility for their feelings. You may find yourself apologizing when you haven't done anything wrong, simply to avoid further conflict or to placate their emotions. However, over time, this kind of manipulation can start to wear you down emotionally and mentally. The weight of being constantly blamed for things outside your control begins to chip away at your self-esteem and peace of mind, leaving you exhausted, frustrated, and unsure of your own worth. Blame shifting is a classic tactic used by toxic people to avoid taking responsibility for their actions. It is a defense mechanism that allows them to protect their ego and avoid facing their own shortcomings. Rather than taking ownership of their mistakes, they use blame shifting as a tool to deflect responsibility and protect their self-image. They might say things like, "If you had just done this differently, everything would have been fine," or "This happened because of something you did or didn't do." In these moments, the toxic person is deflecting their own mistakes and problems onto you, making it seem as though you are the cause of their distress. They manipulate you into believing that if only you had acted differently, things would have turned out better. What makes this so toxic is the way it creates confusion and guilt within the victim. You may start questioning yourself doubting your actions, or wondering if perhaps you did cause the problem. The toxic person is skilled at making you believe that you are responsible for their emotions, their troubles, and even their happiness. But this is a distortion of reality. The truth is that you are not responsible for someone else's emotional state, nor should you be made to feel as though you are. They are using blame to control you, and it is up to you to recognize this manipulation and break free from it. At first, when this happens in a relationship, you may feel compelled to absorb the blame and try to make things right. You may apologize for things you didn't do or take on responsibilities that aren't yours. But over time, this behavior becomes draining, and you begin to feel like you are constantly walking on eggshells, always waiting for the next incident in which you'll be blamed for something outside your control. This emotional weight can affect your mental and emotional health, and eventually, you may feel like you're losing yourself in the process. In Zen Buddhism, we are taught the importance of personal responsibility, the understanding that each person must take accountability for their own actions, words, and emotions. The Buddha's teachings on karma emphasize that we are the creators of our own destiny. Every thought, word, and deed we engage in has consequences, and we are responsible for those consequences. Karma is the law of cause and effect, and it teaches us that our actions have an impact not only on ourselves, but also on the world around us. It's crucial to recognize that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can control our own responses and behaviors. Blame shifting is the opposite of this teaching. It denies the principle of personal responsibility by projecting one's own failures, insecurities, or emotional struggles onto someone else. When we shift the blame to others, we lose the opportunity to learn from our mistakes and grow. We deny ourselves the chance to take ownership of our actions and make positive changes. Instead, we remain stuck in a cycle of externalization, where we look for someone or something to blame for our difficulties, rather than acknowledging our own role in the situation. Let me share a story from Zen practice that will help to illuminate this idea of personal responsibility and the importance of not allowing others to shift blame onto you. Once upon a time, in a quiet village, a young monk was given the task of cleaning the temple. The monk worked diligently, sweeping the floors, lighting the incense, and making sure the temple was spotless. One day, as he was cleaning the temple hall, a mischievous monkey wandered in. The monkey, curious and playful, began to climb the walls and knock over offerings. It swung from the rafters and caused chaos, scattering flowers and knocking over vases. When the head monk saw the mess, he immediately asked the young monk, "Who caused this disorder? Why is the temple in such disarray?" The young monk, startled, pointed to the monkey and said, "It was the monkey master. It ran through the temple and caused all the trouble." The head monk, with a calm smile, held up a mirror in front of the young monk's face and said, "Look into this mirror. Do you see your own reflection?" The young monk gazed into the mirror and saw his own face, calm and steady. The master then asked, "What do you see? Is it the monkey's fault, or is it your own?" The young monk, confused, said, "I see myself, master." The master nodded and said, "The monkey acted out of its nature as monkeys do, but it is you who must clean up the mess. It is not the monkey's fault that you allowed it to disrupt the temple. You are responsible for your own actions, not the actions of others. When we blame others, we lose sight of our own role in the situation. True peace comes when we accept our responsibility, not when we shift the blame." In this story, the monkey's playful actions are not the focus of the lesson. The real lesson is about personal responsibility. The young monk initially shifted the blame to the monkey, but the Zen master helped him realize that true responsibility lies with the individual. In the same way, when we face criticism or challenges in life, we must look inward and recognize our own role in the situation. Shifting the blame to others prevents us from growing and learning. It also keeps us trapped in a cycle of externalization, blaming others rather than taking responsibility for our actions and reactions. This lesson is crucial when it comes to toxic relationships. Toxic people often shift the blame onto others because they cannot or will not accept responsibility for their actions. They refuse to acknowledge their own mistakes or shortcomings, and instead, they manipulate others into believing that they are at fault. They make you feel responsible for their feelings, their mistakes, or the conflict in the relationship. This leaves you feeling guilty, unsure of yourself, and exhausted from constantly trying to fix things that aren't your responsibility. Buddhist teachings remind us that true peace comes when we take responsibility for our own actions, thoughts, and feelings. We cannot control the behavior of others, but we can control how we respond to them. When we allow someone else to shift the blame onto us, we lose our own sense of agency and power. We become entangled in their emotional struggles rather than focusing on our own growth and well-being. By taking responsibility for ourselves, we regain control over our lives and can respond with clarity and wisdom rather than reacting out of guilt or frustration. Take a moment now to reflect on how blame shifting has affected you in your relationships. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to place the blame on you, even though it was not your fault? Can you recall a time when you took responsibility for something that wasn't truly your responsibility? How did it feel to carry the burden of someone else's mistakes or emotions? Here's an exercise for you to try the next time you feel someone shifting the blame onto you. Take a moment to pause and reflect. Ask yourself, am I truly responsible for this situation? What role did I play in this, and what can I learn from it? Recognize that it's okay to take responsibility for your actions, but also understand that you are not responsible for someone else's feelings or mistakes. In moments of blame, shifting, return to your own truth and act from a place of clarity and mindfulness. You are not defined by the mistakes of others, nor should you carry the emotional burden of their unresolved issues. As we move into the next section, remember that the Buddha's teachings remind us to take full responsibility for our own actions and not to allow others to shift the blame onto us. When we accept our role in any situation, we regain our power and our peace. By practicing mindfulness and responsibility, we create space for true growth, healing, and transformation. As we continue on our journey to uncover the signs of toxic relationships, we now come to the fifth sign: endless complaints. Have you ever been around someone who constantly complains about everything? It can feel as though nothing is ever right for them, no matter how much effort you put into making things better or supporting them. From the smallest inconveniences to larger, more serious issues, they seem to always find something to criticize, complain about, or express dissatisfaction with. This constant stream of negativity can feel incredibly draining and overwhelming, as though you are always surrounded by a cloud of discontent. It's as if the toxic person's continuous complaints are a way of pulling everyone around them into their negative mindset, creating an environment where positivity is overshadowed by pessimism and frustration. Over time, this can start to take a toll on your energy and mental well-being, leaving you feeling emotionally exhausted and disconnected from the joy that life has to offer. At first, it may seem like a harmless habit, or just a way for the person to vent about their frustrations. Perhaps they've had a rough day, or they're going through a difficult time. Everyone needs to express their feelings at times, and it can feel natural to lend an ear when someone needs to talk about their struggles. But when this constant complaining becomes a regular pattern, it transforms from a temporary state of frustration to a deeper emotional drain. Toxic people will complain about anything and everything: their work, their family, the weather, the state of the world, and even things that are happening in your own relationship. They focus on what's wrong in their life, often magnifying issues that are minor in the grand scheme of things. Their negativity becomes all-consuming, and before long, their dissatisfaction begins to overshadow the positives in your life as well. It's not just the complaints themselves that affect you, it's the way they make you feel. When you're constantly surrounded by this kind of energy, it can become challenging to maintain your own sense of peace and contentment. The focus on negativity can start to seep into your own thinking, causing you to become more aware of what's going wrong in your life, instead of appreciating what's going well. You might start to find yourself dwelling on problems that would otherwise seem small, and over time, you may begin to adopt the same negative outlook that the toxic person has. This constant stream of complaints can become contagious. As you spend more time with this person, you may start to mirror their mindset without even realizing it. You begin to focus on what's wrong instead of what's going well. Your energy starts to dip, and you may feel more irritable, frustrated, or dissatisfied with your own life. It can feel like you're being pulled into an emotional storm, caught in their whirlpool of negativity. The problem is not just the other person's constant complaining. It's the way their negativity begins to affect you. Just like being stuck in the rain with someone who refuses to seek shelter, you find yourself getting soaked in their emotional storm, feeling increasingly weighed down by their discontent. In Zen Buddhism, one of the key teachings is the importance of cultivating gratitude and focusing on the present moment. The Buddha often spoke about the need to overcome the mind's tendency to fixate on what is lacking or what is wrong. Suffering arises when we focus too much on these deficiencies, when we become attached to what we do not have, or what is not going well in our lives. We start to take the good things for granted and focus instead on the negative aspects, becoming trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction. Gratitude, on the other hand, is the antidote to this mindset. When we practice gratitude, we begin to see the abundance in our lives. We focus on the positives and find joy in the present moment rather than lamenting what is missing or what is wrong. Gratitude shifts our perspective from scarcity to abundance and reminds us of the many blessings that surround us. Let me share a story from Zen practice that highlights the transformative power of gratitude and the importance of shifting our focus from complaints to appreciation. It's a story that helps us understand how a simple change in perspective can alter the way we experience life. In a small Zen monastery nestled in the mountains, there lived a young farmer who was troubled by many things. He had been struggling with his crops, his finances, and his relationship with his family. Every day he walked into the village with a heavy heart, weighed down by all the things that were going wrong in his life. It seemed like nothing ever went his way. He felt frustrated, defeated, and constantly dissatisfied. One day, feeling desperate, the farmer sought the advice of the Zen master who lived nearby. The farmer entered the master's humble hut and said, "Master, I have nothing but problems. My crops are failing, my land is dry, and my family is constantly at odds with one another. It feels like the world is against me. What can I do to make things better?" The Zen master, listening attentively, smiled gently and invited the farmer to sit with him. After a moment of silence, the master said, "Let me show you something." He led the farmer to a small pond beside the monastery. The water in the pond was calm and still, reflecting the trees and the sky above. The master then asked the farmer, "Look at the water and tell me what you see." The farmer looked into the water and replied, "I see the trees, the sky, and the mountains." The master smiled and said, "Yes, but now notice the ripples on the surface of the water. They come and go, don't they?" The farmer nodded, still puzzled. The master continued, "The ripples are like the difficulties you face in life. They come and they go, but the water remains the same. The surface of the water is always still, even when the ripples are there. Your troubles are like those ripples. They may come, but they don't define the stillness beneath them." The farmer took a deep breath, beginning to understand. "But master," he said, "how can I find peace when everything seems to be falling apart?" The master pointed to the surrounding landscape. "Look at the trees and the mountains. They have weathered many storms, yet they are still standing. The clouds may come and go, but the mountains remain. Similarly, you too have the ability to remain rooted in your true self, no matter how turbulent the storm may be." The master then said, "Each day, take a moment to look around you and see what you are grateful for. Even in the midst of your difficulties, there are small blessings, moments of beauty, kindness, and joy. Focus on these and you will find peace." In this story, the Zen master teaches the farmer that, like the water, our true nature is calm and still, even when external circumstances create ripples of difficulty. The farmer had been focusing so much on his problems that he could not see the good things that were present in his life. The Zen master reminded him that while difficulties may arise, we have the power to choose where we focus our attention. When we shift our focus from complaints and dissatisfaction to gratitude and appreciation, we change the way we experience life. The farmer's troubles were still there, but by shifting his focus, he was able to find peace in the present moment. This lesson is especially important in the context of toxic relationships. When someone is constantly complaining, they are focusing on what is wrong rather than what is right. Their negativity can cloud their judgment and prevent them from seeing the blessings and opportunities that exist in their lives. And when we spend too much time around this negativity, it can start to rub off on us. We may find ourselves focusing on what's wrong in our own lives instead of appreciating the good things that we have. By practicing mindfulness and gratitude, we can break free from this cycle. By consciously choosing to focus on the positive aspects of our lives, we can change our perspective and regain our peace. Take a moment now to reflect on how complaints and negativity have affected your life. Have you ever been around someone who constantly complains or focuses on what is wrong? How did it make you feel? Can you remember a time when their negativity started to affect your own mood or mindset? How did it impact your energy and sense of peace? Here's an exercise for you to try the next time you feel overwhelmed by negativity, whether from someone else or from within yourself. Take a deep breath and pause for a moment. Shift your focus to something you are grateful for. It could be something simple, like the warmth of the sun on your skin, the sound of birds singing, or the comfort of a warm meal. By practicing gratitude, you begin to shift your energy and perspective. Instead of focusing on what's wrong, you begin to appreciate what's right in your life. As we move into the next section, remember that the practice of gratitude and mindfulness can transform your life. When we focus on the good, we free ourselves from the grip of complaints and negativity. Let's continue our journey exploring the next sign of toxic behavior and how Buddhist wisdom can help us overcome it. Have you ever been involved with someone whose moods shift unpredictably, leaving you uncertain of where you stand or what to expect from day to day? One moment they may be warm and loving, showering you with affection and praise, and the next they could be cold and distant, leaving you questioning everything. Their mood could switch as easily as the weather, leaving you feeling confused, anxious, and emotionally drained. You may constantly find yourself walking on eggshells, trying to figure out how to behave in order to avoid triggering their mood swings. This is the sixth sign of toxic relationships: emotional inconsistency. The unpredictability of their emotions creates an environment of emotional volatility where you never quite know where you stand. One minute, you might be met with warmth and approval, and the next, you could be met with silence, irritation, or even hostility. This emotional roller coaster can feel deeply unsettling, and it can leave you feeling like you are constantly at the mercy of their shifting moods. The toxic person may not always show their true emotions, instead projecting what they want you to feel. Their mood swings become a mechanism for emotional manipulation, where you are left trying to please them or fix the situation only to be met with more instability and confusion. At first, this may seem like a natural part of any relationship. People have bad days and emotions fluctuate. It's normal for someone to feel down or irritable from time to time, and we all go through moments where we struggle emotionally. However, when emotional inconsistency becomes a regular pattern, it begins to take a more toxic form. Instead of occasional fluctuations, it becomes a way of controlling and manipulating you emotionally. The toxic person may act loving and warm one day, only to withdraw the next, leaving you feeling emotionally drained and uncertain. The unpredictability can make you feel like you are walking a tightrope, never sure of what to expect, and always feeling the pressure to keep them happy in order to avoid upsetting them. This emotional inconsistency creates a sense of instability in the relationship. When you don't know where you stand or what to expect, it can cause anxiety and confusion. You may begin to question your own behavior, constantly wondering if you're doing something wrong. You may feel like you are constantly walking on eggshells, trying to figure out how to behave in order to avoid triggering their negative emotions. Over time, this emotional exhaustion can take a significant toll on your mental and emotional well-being, as the shifting moods begin to wear you down, leaving you feeling emotionally drained, uncertain, and disconnected from your own sense of self. In many cases, emotional inconsistency is a form of manipulation. Toxic individuals often use their emotional unpredictability as a tool to keep you on edge, making you feel responsible for their emotional state. They may not explicitly say it, but their behavior often makes you feel as though their happiness or peace is in your hands. By keeping you in a constant state of emotional uncertainty, they maintain control over the relationship. They may use affection as a reward for compliance or as a way to keep you emotionally dependent on them. You may find yourself trying to appease them, change your behavior, or accommodate their mood swings, always trying to make them happy, but never feeling quite successful. This emotional push and pull leaves you feeling trapped, as though your peace and sense of security are constantly being dictated by their moods. In Zen Buddhism, we are taught the importance of cultivating equanimity, the ability to remain calm and centered regardless of the emotional fluctuations in ourselves or others. The Buddha's teachings on mindfulness emphasize the importance of being fully aware of our emotional states without becoming attached to them. Emotions, like clouds in the sky, come and go. They are transient by nature, and we are encouraged to observe them without allowing them to control us. The practice of mindfulness helps us create space between ourselves and our emotions, allowing us to observe them without identifying with them. When we can detach from our emotions, we no longer allow them to rule over us or define our behavior. Let me share a story from Zen practice that beautifully illustrates the wisdom of emotional consistency and the importance of not allowing external emotional fluctuations to dictate our inner peace. In a small Zen monastery, there was a young monk who struggled with the frequent mood swings of the head monk. One day, the head monk was calm and serene, sharing deep teachings and words of wisdom with the other monks. His presence was peaceful and uplifting, and the young monk felt inspired by the master's guidance. However, on another day, the head monk was suddenly irritable, snapping at the young monk for the smallest of mistakes, showing no patience or compassion. The young monk was left feeling confused and frustrated, unsure of why the master's mood seemed to fluctuate so wildly. Some days the monk would feel uplifted and inspired by the master's wisdom, but on other days he would leave the master's presence feeling defeated and disheartened. This unpredictability created a great deal of emotional turbulence for the young monk. He didn't understand why the master whom he deeply admired could be so unpredictable. His peace and inspiration, which he had gained from the master's teachings, were suddenly undermined by the master's emotional inconsistency. It became a source of anxiety for the young monk, who began to question his place in the monastery. He asked himself, if the Zen master, who is so wise and enlightened, can be like this, then what hope is there for me to achieve peace? The young monk approached the Zen master one day and said, "Master, I don't understand. One moment you are calm and at peace, and the next you are angry and distant. How can I find peace in this uncertainty?" The Zen master, looking at the young monk with a gentle smile, replied, "The storm in my mind does not affect the peace of the mountains. The clouds may pass, but the mountains remain. In the same way, your peace does not need to be shaken by the winds of my mood. Understand this, my emotions are fleeting, like clouds, but your true peace lies in your ability to remain rooted in your own heart regardless of the weather." The young monk was still confused, so he asked, "But Master, how can I remain peaceful when I am affected by your emotions?" The Zen master smiled and replied, "By recognizing that your peace comes from within. The storm may rage outside, but the mountain remains unmoved. Similarly, your true self is not disturbed by external emotions. When you cultivate mindfulness and equanimity, you will learn to observe your own emotions without allowing them to control you." In this story, the Zen master teaches the young monk the importance of emotional consistency. The master's mood swings were a reflection of his own internal struggles, but the young monk's peace should not depend on them. True peace comes from within and is not swayed by the changing emotions of others. Just as the storm may come and go, but the mountain remains steadfast, our inner peace should remain unaffected by external emotional fluctuations. By cultivating mindfulness, we can observe the storm of emotions around us without becoming entangled in it, allowing our true peace to remain unshaken. This lesson is crucial when dealing with emotional inconsistency in toxic relationships. Toxic people often use their emotional highs and lows as a form of control, making others feel uncertain and insecure. They may act loving and warm one day and cold and distant the next, leaving you feeling like you are walking a tightrope. But the Buddha's teachings remind us that equanimity, the ability to maintain inner peace in the face of external turmoil, is essential to spiritual growth. When we practice mindfulness and cultivate a sense of inner peace, we are no longer at the mercy of others' emotional swings. We learn to observe their behavior without becoming attached to it and our peace remains grounded in our own wisdom and truth. Take a moment now to reflect on how emotional inconsistency has affected you in your relationships. Have you ever been around someone whose moods seemed to fluctuate unpredictably? How did it make you feel? Can you recall a time when you tried to adjust your behavior or emotions to accommodate someone else's mood swings? How did it impact your peace and sense of security? Here's an exercise you can try the next time you are in a situation where someone's mood is unpredictable. Pause for a moment. Take a deep breath and turn inward. Ask yourself, am I allowing their emotions to dictate my own? Am I losing my peace because of their emotional state? In that moment, practice equanimity. Observe their emotional fluctuations without becoming attached to them. Remind yourself that your peace does not depend on the emotional state of others. Focus on your own inner calm and return to a place of mindfulness. As we move into the next section, remember that emotional inconsistency in others should not affect your own sense of self. By cultivating mindfulness, equanimity, and inner peace, you can break free from the emotional control of others and remain grounded in your own wisdom and truth. As we continue our exploration of toxic relationships, we now arrive at the seventh sign, jealousy and envy. Have you ever been around someone who seems to struggle with your success, happiness, or achievements? Maybe they act as though your victories are somehow a threat to them. Their behavior may seem subtle at first, but it becomes clear over time that their envy is constantly undermining the peace between you. They may not openly express their jealousy, but their actions, whether dismissive comments, passive-aggressive behavior, or even subtle competition, speak volumes. Jealousy and envy are toxic emotions that can poison relationships. Unlike healthy admiration, jealousy and envy seek to tear others down in order to elevate oneself. They come from a deep sense of insecurity, where someone believes that another person's success diminishes their own worth. They can't genuinely celebrate your accomplishments because they are too focused on their own perceived inadequacies. This emotional state often leaves the person feeling bitter, resentful, and disconnected from the joy that true love and compassion can bring. In a relationship where jealousy and envy are present, there is a constant imbalance of power. One person is always seeking to measure their worth against yours, comparing their life to yours, and feeling resentment for what you have that they do not. The jealousy manifests in different ways. It could be through undermining your achievements, belittling your success, or trying to one-up you in every situation. The toxic person may even go so far as to avoid acknowledging your victories altogether, or minimize them by saying things like, "It wasn't that big of a deal," or "anyone could have done that." This type of reaction creates an emotional barrier that blocks connection and warmth, replacing it with insecurity and competition. At first, this may feel like a simple misunderstanding or rivalry, but over time it can become a powerful force in the relationship, sowing seeds of resentment and slowly eroding trust and mutual respect. The toxic person's jealousy feeds off your success and happiness, always looking for reasons to feel superior. But in the process, they disregard your feelings, causing emotional harm. Zen Buddhism offers valuable teachings on the destructive nature of jealousy and envy. The Buddha taught that attachment to worldly desires is the root of suffering. Jealousy arises when we become attached to the idea that there is a limited supply of success, love, or happiness, and when we compare ourselves to others in an effort to measure our worth. The Buddha emphasized that true happiness is found not in competing with others or measuring our success against theirs, but in embracing our own uniqueness and living with an open heart. Non-attachment to comparison and external validation is essential to freeing ourselves from jealousy and envy. Once a Zen master was walking with his student in the garden of the monastery. The sun was shining, and the flowers were in full bloom. As they walked, the student stopped to admire a particularly beautiful flower. It was vibrant, colorful, and seemed to stand out from the others. The student turned to the master and said, "Master, this flower is so beautiful, but why do the others not look like this? It feels unfair that one flower is so much more beautiful than the others." The master smiled and asked the student, "Do you see that all the flowers are blooming in their own way? Each one is beautiful in its own right. The flowers do not compete with each other for attention. They simply bloom as they are. Why do you think one must be more beautiful than another?" The student thought for a moment and then said, "But master, this one seems so perfect while the others are less vibrant." The master replied, "You are comparing the flowers, but each one has its own place in this world. The beauty of this flower does not diminish the beauty of the others. It is in your attachment to comparison that you see imperfection. The same is true for people. When you compare yourself to others, you deny your own unique beauty. Jealousy arises when you believe that someone else's success, beauty, or happiness takes away from your own. But the truth is that there is enough beauty, enough happiness, and enough success for everyone. By letting go of jealousy, you allow your own unique light to shine." In this story, the Zen master uses the metaphor of the flowers to help the student understand that comparison is the root of jealousy. When we compare ourselves to others, we create an illusion of scarcity. We believe that someone else's success, beauty, or happiness diminishes our own, and as a result, we feel envious. But in reality, there is no competition. Just as each flower has its unique beauty, so too does each person. When we release our attachment to comparison, we free ourselves from the chains of jealousy and envy, allowing our true selves to shine. This lesson is especially important in toxic relationships, where jealousy can breed conflict and resentment. A toxic person who is constantly comparing themselves to you may try to undermine your happiness by belittling your achievements, or by making you feel like your success is undeserved. They may feel threatened by your accomplishments, and instead of celebrating with you, they attempt to diminish your joy. But by embracing the wisdom of Zen teachings, we learn to let go of comparison. We understand that our success does not take away from anyone else's, and their success does not take away from ours. We learn to celebrate each other's growth without fear or resentment, and in doing so, we create space for genuine love, compassion, and support. Take a moment now to reflect on how jealousy and envy have played a role in your life. Have you ever felt jealous of someone else's success, happiness, or achievements? Can you recall a time when someone's jealousy affected you either by diminishing your own happiness or by creating tension in your relationship? How did it feel when you allowed jealousy or envy to take root in your mind? Take a deep breath and let yourself observe these emotions without judgment. Recognize how they may have affected you and allowed them to pass through without attachment. Here's an exercise for you to try the next time you feel a pang of jealousy or envy. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what is it about this situation that is triggering these emotions in me? Rather than letting jealousy take hold, practice focusing on what you can be grateful for in the moment. Shift your perspective from scarcity to abundance. Remind yourself that the success or happiness of others does not take away from your own. There is enough for everyone, and your worth is not defined by comparison. As we move into the next section, remember that jealousy and envy are rooted in attachment and comparison. By practicing non-attachment and gratitude, we can free ourselves from these toxic emotions and embrace the joy of our own unique journey. Let's continue our path of understanding as we explore the next sign of toxic behavior and how we can use Buddhist wisdom to break free. As we continue our journey to uncover the signs of toxic relationships, we now arrive at the 8th sign: lack of empathy. Have you ever been with someone who seems unable or unwilling to understand how you feel, especially during moments of vulnerability or distress? Someone who dismisses your emotions, invalidates your experiences, or even shows indifference to your suffering. It's as if their emotional world revolves entirely around themselves, and they cannot or choose not to step into your shoes to understand what you are going through. The pain you feel, the struggles you face, are simply invisible to them. Empathy at its core is one of the most essential elements of any healthy relationship. It involves the ability to recognize, understand, and share in the feelings of another person. Without empathy, a relationship becomes emotionally imbalanced and unhealthy, as one person's emotional needs are continually ignored, downplayed, or dismissed. When a toxic person lacks empathy, it can feel as though you are not seen, heard, or understood. Your emotional experiences are invalidated, and your struggles become irrelevant to them. This leaves you feeling isolated, unsupported, and emotionally drained, as though your suffering doesn't matter to the very person you expect to be a source of support. Toxic people may not necessarily be overtly cruel or malicious, but their inability to empathize with others is deeply harmful. They may dismiss your emotions by saying things like, "You're overreacting," "It's not a big deal," or even, "Why can't you just get over it?" In doing so, they downplay your feelings and make you feel as though you are the one in the wrong for having emotional responses. This makes you question your own reality and causes you to doubt the validity of your feelings. They might act as though your struggles or pain are insignificant, focusing solely on their own needs or problems, while leaving you feeling invisible and unsupported. The truth is, their inability to empathize with you makes the relationship feel unbalanced, as you're left carrying the emotional burden alone with little to no validation from them. At first, this behavior may feel like simple insensitivity, or perhaps the person is just having a bad day. Maybe they don't realize how their words or actions are affecting you, and you try to brush it off. You may assume that they simply don't understand or aren't aware of the impact of their behavior. However, when this lack of empathy becomes a recurring pattern, it can cause significant harm to your emotional well-being. You begin to feel as though your emotions are invalid, or that your pain is irrelevant. As this happens more frequently, it becomes harder to maintain your peace and self-esteem, and the emotional distance between you and the toxic person grows wider. Over time, this lack of empathy can erode your trust in the relationship. You may begin to doubt yourself, questioning whether you're too sensitive, too needy, or too emotional. You may even begin to believe that your pain isn't worth acknowledging. The more the toxic person dismisses your feelings, the more you internalize their neglect, and the more you may feel emotionally exhausted and confused. You become uncertain of your own worth and increasingly dependent on them to validate your existence, leading to a cycle of emotional turmoil where your needs remain unmet and your peace constantly disturbed. In Zen Buddhism, the Buddha teaches us to cultivate compassion, a quality closely tied to empathy. Compassion involves the ability to deeply understand the suffering of others, to step into their shoes, and to act from a place of kindness, care, and understanding. However, compassion is not just about feeling sympathy for others' struggles. It is about recognizing the interconnectedness of all beings and offering support, presence, and love in times of difficulty. The Buddha's teachings often emphasize that compassion begins with ourselves. We must first learn to be kind and understanding toward ourselves before we can offer that same kindness to others. In relationships, when we experience lack of empathy, it's a reflection of a person's inability to connect with their own suffering, and by extension, with the suffering of others. Let me share a story from Zen practice that highlights the importance of compassion and the deep connection that comes when we truly understand and empathize with others. Once a young monk came to a Zen master seeking guidance. He was struggling with his own suffering and the suffering of others. The monk had seen many people suffer in his life, his family, his friends, and even strangers, and he had begun to wonder how he could help alleviate their pain. The young monk asked the Zen master, "How can I ease the suffering of others? How can I help those around me who are in pain?" The Zen master smiled gently and replied, "There is a story I want to share with you." The master began. Once a monk became very ill, and his body grew weak and frail. His fellow monks, seeing his suffering, gathered around him, offering food, medicine, and words of comfort. They did everything they could to ease his pain, but no matter how much they did, the monk remained in agony. Seeing this, the Zen master sat down beside the sick monk, but instead of offering him more medicine or words, he simply held his hand and stayed quietly with him. He did not speak, nor did he offer any physical remedies. He just sat with the monk, offering his presence, his compassionate silence. The young monk listened intently, his curiosity growing. He asked, "Master, how did this help the sick monk?" The Zen master continued. In that moment, the sick monk experienced a profound sense of peace. He realized that the greatest healing was not in words or in offering solutions, but in the presence of someone who truly understood his pain. The master's silence was filled with empathy, allowing the sick monk to feel deeply seen, heard, and acknowledged. This act of compassion didn't require fixing the situation, but simply being there for the monk in his suffering. The young monk was still deep in thought, and then he asked, "Master, what did this teach the sick monk?" The Zen master smiled and said, "It taught him that true compassion doesn't necessarily involve offering a solution or a fix. It's about simply being present with someone in their suffering. It's about sharing their pain without judgment, without trying to change them. Compassion is not always about solving the problem, but offering our presence and our heart in a way that allows others to feel understood and supported." In this story, the Zen master demonstrates that true compassion involves understanding and presence, not necessarily fixing or solving someone's problems. The Zen master didn't try to cure the sick monk's illness with more medicine or advice, but he was there with him in his pain, offering comfort through empathy. This act of being present without judgment is a powerful form of compassion that many toxic relationships lack. In toxic relationships, the lack of empathy often results in emotional neglect. The other person may ignore your feelings, downplay your struggles, or fail to acknowledge your pain. Instead of offering understanding or a safe space for you to be heard, they may dismiss your emotions as unimportant. This emotional neglect can deeply affect your sense of self-worth and peace as you start to feel invisible and emotionally unsupported. This lack of empathy is rooted in self-centeredness. Toxic people often focus on their own needs, desires, and emotions, leaving little room for the feelings of others. When we are in relationships with such individuals, we may find ourselves constantly trying to meet their needs, but our own needs are left unmet. This creates an emotional imbalance where one person's struggles are constantly magnified while the others are minimized. Take a moment now to reflect on how lack of empathy has played a role in your relationships. Have you ever been around someone who dismissed your emotions or belittled your pain? How did this make you feel? Can you recall a time when you tried to share something important with someone only to have them invalidate your experience? How did this affect your trust connection and emotional well-being? Here's an exercise for you to try the next time you encounter someone who shows a lack of empathy or dismisses your feelings. Pause for a moment. Take a deep breath and turn inward. Ask yourself, what is it that I am feeling right now? How can I care for my own emotional needs? Practice holding space for yourself in those moments. While others may not always be able to meet your emotional needs, you have the power to be there for yourself. You can validate your own emotions and seek out support from people who genuinely offer empathy. As we move into the next section, remember that the Buddha's teachings remind us of the power of compassion. True compassion arises when we deeply understand the suffering of others and offer them the comfort of our presence. We must learn to surround ourselves with people who can offer genuine empathy and compassion and let go of those whose lack of empathy causes us emotional harm. As we continue our journey through the signs of toxic relationships, we now arrive at the 9th sign, selfishness and taking without giving. Have you ever been involved with someone who constantly takes from you your time, your energy, your emotions, yet never gives anything in return? Perhaps they demand your attention, your resources, or your love, but when it comes time for them to offer something in return, they are nowhere to be found. This one-sided dynamic can be incredibly draining, leaving you feeling depleted, unappreciated, and resentful. It's as though your kindness and generosity are being exploited with nothing to replenish what you give. Selfishness in this sense is not just about being self-centered. It's about the imbalance created when one person takes without ever considering the needs of the other. Toxic people who exhibit this behavior rarely show empathy or concern for your well-being. They are often focused on fulfilling their own desires, and they view others as tools to achieve their goals. Whether it's emotionally, financially, or physically, they take from others without giving anything back. They may use their charm, their wit, or their emotional manipulation to get what they want. But when the time comes for them to offer something in return, they are quick to withdraw or give only when it benefits them. At first, you may not notice the imbalance. Perhaps you are someone who enjoys helping others, so you willingly give of yourself. But over time, you may begin to realize that you are always the one giving, whether it's your support, your time, your love, or your resources, and that the toxic person in your life never reciprocates. You may find yourself feeling exhausted, emotionally drained, and resentful, yet the toxic person remains oblivious or indifferent to your needs. The imbalance in the relationship becomes more and more apparent, but the toxic person continues to take without regard for your well-being. In Zen Buddhism, one of the core teachings is the importance of balance and interconnectedness. The Buddha often spoke of the interconnectedness of all beings, emphasizing that we are not isolated individuals, but part of a larger whole. This interconnectedness is reflected in our relationships with others. True giving comes from a place of abundance, not from a sense of obligation or expectation. Giving without attachment to receiving is a practice of generosity and compassion. When we give, We should do so freely without expecting anything in return, but at the same time, we must recognize that true generosity also requires boundaries. Giving should not come at the cost of our own well-being, and when the balance of giving and receiving is disrupted, it is important to reestablish equilibrium. Let me share a story from Zen practice that illustrates the power of balance in relationships and the importance of giving without depleting oneself. A young monk approached his Zen master one day and said, "Master, I wish to be more compassionate and helpful. I want to serve others and give everything I have to help those in need. Please teach me how to truly give." The Zen master smiled gently and invited the monk to sit beside him. He then picked up an empty bowl from the shelf and placed it before the monk. "Do you see this bowl?" the master asked. The monk nodded. "Yes, master, it is empty." The Zen master said, "Now, if you want to help others, you must first fill your bowl. If your bowl is empty, you cannot give anything. It will be impossible to offer food to others from an empty bowl, just as you cannot offer compassion from an empty heart." The monk looked puzzled, so the master continued, "The key to true giving is balance. When your bowl is full, you can offer freely. But when your bowl is empty, you must stop giving and refill it. In the same way, when we offer compassion, love, or support, we must also take care of ourselves and replenish our own energy. If we give without replenishing, we become empty and we have nothing left to offer." The monk then asked, "But master, what if there are others who are in great need? Should I not give everything I have to help them?" The master replied, "Yes, give what you can, but never deplete yourself in the process. Giving without care for yourself will only lead to exhaustion and resentment. True compassion comes from a place of abundance, not depletion. When your bowl is full, give freely, but when it is empty, rest and refill. Only then will your giving be sustainable and genuine." In this story, the Zen master teaches the young monk that true giving requires balance. Just as the bowl must be filled before it can be offered to others, we must first take care of ourselves before we can truly give to others. If we give too much of ourselves without replenishing, we become empty and drained. In the context of toxic relationships, selfishness arises when one person takes and takes, leaving the other person feeling empty and exhausted. When the balance of giving and receiving is disrupted, it is important to recognize the need to replenish and restore our own well-being. Toxic people often fail to recognize this balance. They may take from you emotionally, mentally, or even physically, without ever considering your needs. They may constantly demand your attention, your time, or your resources without ever offering anything in return. This creates an imbalance in the relationship where you are giving endlessly, while they are taking without offering anything back. Over time, this imbalance becomes emotionally depleting, and you may feel as though you are constantly giving but never receiving the support or care that you need. The Buddha's teachings remind us that true generosity comes from a place of balance. Generosity is not about giving everything we have until we are depleted. It is about giving with awareness, understanding that we must also care for ourselves in order to truly care for others. When we practice generosity without expecting anything in return, we do so from a place of abundance, not from a place of depletion. By recognizing our own needs and boundaries, we can give freely and without attachment, knowing that we have enough to offer. Take a moment now to reflect on how selfishness and taking without giving have affected you in your relationships. Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt like you were constantly giving, but the other person was never there to offer anything in return. How did it make you feel to be in an imbalance of giving and receiving? Can you recall a time when you gave more than you had, leaving yourself drained and exhausted? Here's an exercise for you to try the next time you feel like you are giving more than you are receiving. Pause and check in with yourself. Ask, am I giving from a place of abundance, or am I giving out of obligation, leaving myself empty? Recognize that it is okay to set boundaries and take time for yourself. True giving comes when you have something to offer, and it is not about sacrificing your well-being in the process. Honor your own needs and ensure that your bowl is full before you offer to others. As we move into the next section, remember that the balance of giving and receiving is key to healthy relationships. By practicing self-care awareness and boundaries, we can break free from the cycle of one-sided giving and create relationships that are rooted in mutual respect and generosity. Let's continue our journey exploring the next sign of toxic behavior and how Buddhist wisdom can help us break free from it. We now arrive at the 10th sign, disrespecting boundaries. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship with someone who constantly crosses your boundaries, either physically, emotionally, or mentally? It can feel as though no matter how many times you express your needs or try to establish limits, they are ignored or dismissed. This kind of behavior can make you feel like you are losing control over your own life and your sense of personal space. Boundaries are essential for maintaining healthy relationships. They are the invisible lines that define what is acceptable and what is not, allowing individuals to feel safe, respected, and heard. Healthy boundaries protect your well-being and ensure that your needs are met without compromising your values or personal integrity. However, toxic people often fail to recognize or respect these boundaries, instead acting in ways that are invasive, controlling, or dismissive of your needs. Disrespecting boundaries can manifest in many forms. It could be a friend who constantly oversteps your emotional limits, pushing you to share things you're not comfortable talking about, or a partner who disregards your need for alone time or personal space. It could be a colleague who keeps interrupting you during work, or a family member who ignores your need for rest or privacy. Whatever the form, the result is the same. You begin to feel as though your needs and desires don't matter, and that your personal space is constantly under threat. This kind of behavior can create an ongoing sense of discomfort and anxiety, as you never know when your boundaries will be crossed again. It can also leave you feeling powerless, as though you have no control over your own life. The more often your boundaries are disregarded, the more you may start to question your own worth, thinking that perhaps you're being unreasonable, or that you don't have the right to ask for what you need. Over time, this can lead to feelings of resentment, frustration, and deep emotional exhaustion. In Zen Buddhism, the concept of boundaries is not only about physical space, but also about maintaining a sense of inner peace and personal integrity. The Buddha's teachings emphasize the importance of mindfulness and self-awareness in maintaining balance in all areas of life. Boundaries are not simply about drawing lines between yourself and others. They are about recognizing your own needs and honoring them with respect and compassion. To live in alignment with Buddhist principles, we must develop the ability to be mindful of when our boundaries are being violated, and we must have the courage to stand firm and assert ourselves when necessary. Let me share a story from Zen practice that highlights the importance of respecting both our own boundaries and the boundaries of others, and how mindfulness can help us navigate these situations with grace and clarity. A young monk had recently joined a Zen monastery and was eager to learn the ways of Zen. One day, the head monk asked him to perform the task of sweeping the temple grounds. The young monk, eager to please, set to work immediately sweeping with great care and attention. However, as he worked, he noticed that the head monk kept following him around, offering unsolicited advice and criticism. "You're not sweeping fast enough," the master would say. "Your strokes aren't long enough. You're missing spots." The young monk, feeling frustrated and overwhelmed, tried his best to do as the master instructed, but the constant interference made it impossible for him to concentrate. Every time he tried to focus, the master's voice would interrupt, and the monk's anxiety grew. Eventually, the young monk could no longer bear it and turned to the head monk saying, "Master, I'm doing my best, but your constant interference is making it hard for me to work. I need some space to do this on my own." The head monk paused for a moment, observing the young monk's distress. With a gentle smile, he said, "You are right, my young friend. I have crossed your boundaries without realizing it. Boundaries are not only physical, but mental and emotional as well. We must respect each other's personal space and needs in order to foster peace and harmony." The young monk, relieved, nodded in understanding. He had learned an important lesson that day. True peace comes from being mindful of both our own boundaries and the boundaries of others. In order to cultivate harmony, we must recognize and honor the needs of ourselves and those around us. In this story, the Zen master's interference with the young monk's task represents the violation of the monk's personal boundaries. At first, the young monk struggled with the situation, unsure of how to handle the constant disruptions. But through mindful reflection, he was able to assert his own needs and communicate them clearly to the master. This allowed him to regain a sense of peace and clarity free from the disruption of external influences. In the same way, when we find ourselves in toxic relationships, it is important to recognize when our boundaries are being violated and to assert them with clarity and compassion. Toxic individuals often fail to respect our boundaries, instead prioritizing their own needs over ours. This creates an imbalance in the relationship and leaves us feeling powerless and drained. However, by practicing mindfulness and self-awareness, we can become more attuned to our own needs and learn to assert ourselves when necessary. This practice allows us to protect our inner peace and well-being, while maintaining healthy, respectful relationships with others. Buddhist teachings remind us that we have the right to protect our own peace. Setting boundaries is not about being selfish or rigid, but about creating space for ourselves to grow and cultivate wisdom. When we honor our own needs and boundaries, we are better able to show up for others from a place of clarity and compassion, rather than from a place of depletion or resentment. Take a moment now to reflect on the boundaries in your own life. Have you ever been in a situation where someone repeatedly crossed your boundaries, whether physically, emotionally, or mentally? How did it make you feel? Can you recall a time when you failed to assert your boundaries, allowing someone else's needs to take precedence over your own? How did this impact your sense of self and well-being? Here's an exercise for you to try the next time you feel that your boundaries are being crossed. Pause for a moment and take a deep breath. Ask yourself, what is it that I need in this situation? How can I assert my boundaries without being aggressive or unkind? Allow yourself to communicate your needs clearly and respectfully, knowing that your peace and well-being are just as important as anyone else's. By honoring your own boundaries, you allow space for healthy, balanced relationships to flourish. As we move into the next section, remember that mindfulness and self-awareness are essential practices in maintaining our personal boundaries. When we honor our own needs and assert our boundaries, we protect our inner peace and create the space for true growth and harmony in our relationships. Let's continue our journey, exploring the next sign of toxic behavior and how Buddhist wisdom can help us overcome it. Conclusion: finding peace through letting go. As we reach the final part of our journey together, it's time to reflect on the profound lessons we've uncovered about toxic relationships and the wisdom of Buddhist teachings. Through each sign of toxic behavior, whether it be constant criticism, manipulation, through guilt, undermining confidence, blame, shifting endless complaints, emotional inconsistency, jealousy and envy, lack of empathy, selfishness, and taking without giving or disrespecting boundaries, we have learned that these behaviors stem from a place of deep inner insecurity, fear, and attachment. Toxic people often create emotional turmoil for others because they are unable to cultivate their own inner peace and wisdom. But as we have learned, Buddhist wisdom offers us the tools to break free from this cycle, the tools to regain our peace, our power, and our inner calm. Mindfulness, non-attachment, equanimity, and self-compassion are the practices that will allow us to stay grounded amidst the emotional storms created by toxic people. These teachings remind us that we do not need to take on the emotional burdens of others or let their negativity define us. We have the power to choose how we respond to others, and most importantly, how we care for ourselves. The Buddha's teachings point us toward letting go of the need for external validation, letting go of emotional attachment to others' behaviors, and letting go of the desire to control outcomes. When we let go, we make space for peace to enter our hearts. Letting go is not about resignation or giving up. It's about releasing the emotional weight that we have been carrying, the weight of fear, resentment, and attachment. When we let go of these burdens, we create room for true healing and growth. This journey is about choosing peace over conflict, compassion over resentment, and wisdom over fear. When we practice mindfulness, the ability to be present in the moment, to observe our emotions without judgment, we reclaim our power. We no longer allow the toxic behaviors of others to dictate our emotions or our sense of self-worth. Instead, we learn to rest in the quiet, knowing that we are enough, just as we are, and that we deserve relationships that honor and respect us as whole, worthy individuals. As we move forward, remember that letting go is a practice, not a one-time event. Every day we have the opportunity to practice non-attachment, to recognize when we are being pulled into negative patterns, and to gently release those attachments, bringing ourselves back to a place of peace. Self-compassion will guide us in this process, reminding us that we are worthy of kindness, that our boundaries are important, and that we deserve love and respect. When we honor ourselves in this way, we naturally begin to attract relationships that reflect the same level of respect and care. Finding peace through letting go is not a passive act. It's an active, ongoing process of choosing to protect our inner calm in the face of life's challenges. It's about finding the courage to step away from toxic relationships and to step into the light of our own inner wisdom. By practicing mindfulness, compassion, and non-attachment, we free ourselves from the emotional manipulation and negativity of toxic people, allowing ourselves to live more fully in the present moment, with a heart open to love, joy, and peace. As we close this journey together, take a moment to feel the peace that arises from the lessons shared here. You are not defined by the toxic behaviors of others, and you are not required to carry their emotional burdens. Your worth is not determined by their approval or judgment. You are enough. The peace you seek is already within you, and by letting go of the things that weigh you down, you allow that peace to blossom fully. Let's take a deep breath together now, feeling the stillness and calm within. Allow yourself to let go of anything that no longer serves you, knowing that you are worthy of happiness, love, and inner peace. May you continue your journey with compassion, wisdom, and a heart full of peace. Sweet dreams.